This is the Release and Realization podcast, where we explore emotional freedom and practical manifestation based on the teachings of Lester Levinson and Neville Goddard to help you unlock your inner power and create the life you want. Welcome. In today's episode, David and Anna explore the inner cause and the deeper level where all experience is truly created.
Welcome in, everybody. We are stepping into an exploration today that, it promises nothing short of a massive paradigm shift.
It really does.
And I do not use those words lightly. In today's deep dive, we are dissecting a profoundly challenging concept drawn from a really fascinating piece of source material. It's a document known as Belistet-Züvig.
Right, and it's a dense one.
It is. So our mission over the next hour or so is pretty ambitious. We are aiming to completely flip how you, the listener, view your relationship with reality itself.
A small task for a Tuesday, right?
Yeah, totally casual. But just to be clear, right out of the gate, we are not talking about psychological tricks here.
No, absolutely not.
We aren't going to give you a list of cognitive behavioral techniques to, manage your emotions or 5 ways to reframe your negative thoughts. This is about discovering the absolute literal root of where every single experience in your life is actually born.
The literal root.
Exactly. It's a concept the material refers to as the inner cause.
And it is a profound shift. It requires us to step back and look at the very mechanics of how we exist in the world.
Yeah.
When we really analyze this philosophy, the implications are staggering because it challenges the fundamental operating system that almost all of us run on every single day, completely subconsciously.
Subconsciously is the key word there. So let me pose a question to you, the listener, right now. Have you ever felt like your life is just a continuous, exhausting chain of reactions to external events?
Oh, I think everyone has.
Right. Think about the feeling of being a pinball in a machine. You wake up and immediately you stub your toe.
The worst way to start.
Then you get into the kitchen and spill your coffee. By the time you get to your car, you hit every red light, and then your boss makes a passive-aggressive comment at the morning meeting.
And your internal narrative for the entire day is just set.
It's totally set. It becomes, this happened, so I got mad. My partner said that, so I felt defensive. The traffic was terrible, so my whole morning is completely ruined.
Right.
It feels like a row of dominoes falling, where you were always the last domino to get knocked over.
If you feel that way, you are certainly not alone. I mean, it is the default human experience.
For sure.
From a purely biological and sensory standpoint, it makes complete sense that you would interpret life this way.
Yeah.
We are biologically wired to scan our physical environment, identify what is happening, and react to it to survive.
Which kept us alive, thousands of years ago.
Exactly. On the surface, this perspective is entirely logical. You perceive an event, you experience a feeling, and you naturally attribute that feeling to the event, cause and effect.
The ultimate trap.
It is, because what our source material reveals today is that while this seems like the unquestionable concrete truth of existence, it is actually entirely backward.
Backward.
Completely. What we're going to explore is the revelation that the external world is not the initiator of your experience at all.
Which, if we accept that premise, it turns everything upside down.
It really does.
The illusion of the external chain reaction is just so deeply ingrained in us. The source material explicitly asserts that what we usually consider an external cause is actually already a consequence.
Yes.
By the time an event happens in front of you, it's already the end of the line, not the beginning.
That's the perfect way to phrase it.
Wait, I need to play devil's advocate for a second here.
Go for it.
Let's say I'm walking down the street and it starts pouring rain and I get completely soaked.
Okay.
The standard operating system says the rain is the external cause and my physical discomfort and annoyance are the consequence. How on earth is the rain a consequence?
Well, it requires a shift in how we define experience.
Okay.
The material isn't denying that physical phenomena exist. It's not saying you materialize the rain clouds out of thin air just to ruin your own day.
Right, like I'm not Storm from the X-Men.
Exactly. What it's saying is that the reality of your experience of that rain is a consequence of your internal state. There's a foundational quote in this document that perfectly encapsulates this.
Oh, I know the one.
It states, "Experience does not initiate, it expresses. Reality does not cause, it reveals."
Reality does not cause, it reveals. That is a heavy sentence.
It's the core of everything we're discussing today.
What does it actually mean that reality reveals?
Think of it like a mirror. A mirror doesn't cause your reflection. It reveals to you what you already look like.
Okay, that makes sense.
Imagine waking up in the morning, walking into your bathroom and seeing a giant smudge of dirt on your face in the mirror.
Yeah.
You wouldn't grab a bottle of glass cleaner and start frantically scrubbing the mirror, trying to wash the dirt off the reflection.
Because the dirt isn't on the mirror.
Exactly. You know instinctively that the mirror is merely reporting facts about your face. If we apply this to the philosophy we're discussing, the external events of your life, the situations you find yourself in, are not independent forces acting upon you from the outside.
They're just the mirror.
They're the mirror showing you where your consciousness currently resides. When the author notes that experience does not initiate, it means the event itself has no self-starting power over your internal world. It is an expression of a state that already exists.
Let's ground this in a really mundane, everyday scenario to see how it plays out.
Sure.
Because I think it helps to get out of the abstract. Imagine you're at the grocery store. You're minding your own business, looking at avocados.
As one does.
Right, and someone aggressively snaps at you, totally unprovoked, complaining that your cart is in the way.
We have all been there.
The standard operating system says that person is the external cause. Their rudeness is the initiation. My spiked heart rate and my foul mood for the rest of the afternoon are the direct consequences.
That's the normal way to view it.
But according to this philosophy, that event, the person snapping at you, is already the consequence. It's not the primary cause of your bad day. It's a revelation.
Yes. Treating the person at the grocery store as the cause of your distress is exactly like scrubbing the bathroom mirror. It is a fundamental misunderstanding of the mechanics of reality. It's like sitting in a movie theater, realizing you hate the plot of the film, and marching up to the front to yell at the canvas screen.
Yelling at the screen doesn't change the movie.
No, because the screen isn't causing the movie. The projector in the back of the room is. The situation at the grocery store is the image on the screen. It is expressing something. It is revealing something about the inner cause, the state of consciousness that is currently operating as the projector.
Which feels completely counterintuitive because our entire sensory apparatus screams that the person yelling at us is the cause of our stress.
Of course it does.
My ears hear the loud voice, my brain registers a threat, my body releases cortisol. The cause seems entirely external.
It's a very compelling illusion.
But instead of focusing on the person yelling, we're supposed to pause and ask a totally different question. The material suggests the question isn't, why did this happen to me, but rather, from which state of consciousness did this become experienceable?
That framing is so vital. Notice the precise wording used in the material. It doesn't ask, why did you manifest this terrible person at the grocery store?
Which is how a lot of modern internet spirituality would frame it.
Right, and that implies a sort of magical, blame-heavy thinking. Instead, it asks, from which state of consciousness did this become experienceable?
Right.
It's entirely about what you are currently capable of experiencing based on where your consciousness is anchored. If you are anchored in a state of defense, of feeling perpetually misunderstood, or of general friction with the world,
The environment will just reveal that to you.
exactly, it will provide experiences that match that exact friction.
Yeah.
The external event is the echo of the internal state.
So if the external world isn't the cause, that brings us to the core of this entire deep dive, defining the true inner cause.
Yes.
The author refers to this as an ontological shift, and I want to be very clear about how this is defined because it's so easy to misinterpret. The material states the inner cause is not what you think about what is happening. It is the state of consciousness from which it happens.
That distinction is the crux of the entire document. And honestly, it's where most modern self-help philosophies fall terribly short.
How so?
Well, we are so culturally conditioned by the idea of positive thinking. We believe that if we just manage our thoughts or our emotions about an event, we are doing the inner work.
Like slapping a positive affirmation on a bad mood.
Exactly. We think that if someone snaps at us at the grocery store, the correct internal response is to tell ourselves, oh, they're just having a bad day, I shouldn't let it bother me, I choose peace.
Right.
We think that active psychological maneuvering is the inner cause. But this philosophy emphatically states that the inner cause is not psychological and it is not emotional.
That is a huge point of friction for me. If it's not my thoughts and it's not my emotions, what is it?
It's deeper than that.
The text notes that this is a fundamental state of being. It actually references a mid-20th century philosopher named Neville Goddard.
Yes, usually just referred to as Neville in these circles.
His core philosophy was built entirely on this premise, that the human imagination and consciousness are the literal acting God and the only cause of reality.
Exactly. Neville Goddard's work aligns perfectly with this premise. He taught that consciousness is the one and only reality, and the physical world is just a delayed, crystallized reflection of it.
A crystallized reflection.
And what's crucial here is that this isn't meant in a poetic, metaphorical way. The material uses a very specific, philosophically heavy word. It says this is true in an ontological sense.
Ontological. That is definitely not a word I use in casual conversation.
Not many people do.
Can you break down what that actually means in this context versus, say, a psychological sense?
Sure. Ontology is the branch of philosophy that studies the nature of being, existence, and reality itself. So when we say consciousness is the cause in an ontological sense, we mean that the state of consciousness is the literal structural foundation of what is allowed to exist in your reality.
Okay, I'm following.
Think of psychology as the wallpaper, the furniture, and the paint colors inside a house. You can rearrange the furniture. You can paint the walls a brighter color to feel better. That's positive thinking.
Right.
But ontology is the concrete foundation and the architectural framing of the house itself. You can't paint your way out of a house that is structurally collapsing.
Well, that's good.
The cause of your experience is never an event. It's never a person. It's never a passing mood. The sole, absolute, ontological cause of any experience is the foundational state being occupied.
The state being occupied. Okay, so sticking with the house analogy, you occupy a certain state, and from the windows of that specific house, you can only see a certain view.
Beautifully put.
There's an incredibly clear example provided in the material to make this abstract concept practical. It asks us to imagine two people entering the exact same situation.
I love this example.
Let's say it's a high-stakes corporate meeting. The physical space is identical. The same people are sitting around the table. The exact same words are spoken by the CEO regarding a company restructuring.
Okay.
Yet person A perceives a massive, terrifying threat to their livelihood, and person B perceives a thrilling opportunity for a promotion. We see this happen all the time in life.
It happens constantly. And the brilliant, simple question posed about that scenario is, what changed?
It definitely wasn't the external event. The CEO's words were exactly the same for both people.
Precisely. The external event was identical down to the decibel of the words spoken and the temperature of the room. What changed was the state of consciousness of the individuals perceiving it.
So the state acts as a filter.
A state of consciousness acts as a filter, but it goes a step further, and this is where it gets incredibly deep. The material suggests a state of consciousness is not just a passive filter, but an active field of selection.
A field of selection. I want to linger on that phrase because it completely changes the geometry of how I think about my daily interactions.
It is a radical way to view the world. Think of reality not as a single fixed timeline of events thrust upon you, but as an infinite field of potential experiences, all existing simultaneously as possibilities.
Like radio stations.
Exactly. When you occupy a specific state of consciousness, that state acts like a highly specific magnet. It selects specific experiences out of that infinite field and renders them real to your senses.
Oh.
The material states that experience only becomes real from the state of consciousness in which awareness currently resides. Depending on the state you are occupying, certain experiences are quite literally selected into your reality, while others remain completely invisible to you.
Invisible. That is the part that completely short-circuits my brain.
That's a lot to wrap your head around.
Because to truly, explain, like, I'm 5. How can something sitting right in front of me be invisible just because of my state?
To bridge the gap between high-level philosophy and tangible science, we can look at the biology of how human perception actually works.
Okay, let's do that.
In neuroscience, there's a network in our brain called the reticular activating system, or the RAS. At any given second, your senses are bombarded with millions of bits of information.
Right, sights, sounds, temperature.
If your brain processed all of it, you would instantly go mad. So, the RAS acts as a bouncer at a nightclub. It filters out 99.9% of the data and only lets in the information that it deems important based on your current focus, beliefs, and parameters.
Oh, this is like when you buy a new car.
Yes, the classic example.
You buy a silver Honda Civic, and suddenly, everywhere you look on the highway, you see silver Honda Civics.
Oh.
They didn't magically spawn into existence. Your RAS just suddenly flagged them as relevant, so now you perceive them.
Exactly. Before you bought the car, those silver Civics were, for all intents and purposes, invisible to you. Your field of selection did not include them.
Okay, I see where you're going with this.
Now apply this biologically proven concept to the ontological philosophy of states. If you are occupying a state of consciousness characterized by lack, fear, or insecurity, your internal RAS is tuned to that frequency.
It's only going to look for threats.
Right. An incredible opportunity could be sitting right across the table from you, speaking the exact same words that would make someone else a millionaire, but your field of selection literally cannot process it as an opportunity.
It will interpret those exact words as a threat, a scam, or a terrible risk.
The words didn't change. The physical reality didn't change. Your field of selection determined what reality was allowed to be born from that moment.
This perfectly explains why trying to force external circumstances to change without changing the state of consciousness is so universally exhausting.
It's a fool's errand.
You are trying to manually rearrange the silver Honda Civics on the highway instead of just changing what your brain is looking for.
That is exactly what we do.
If your field of selection is tuned to a frequency of struggle, you will subconsciously select the hardest path, the most difficult interpretation, and the most challenging interactions out of any given environment, purely because that is all your state allows you to see.
Which brings us to the most practical aspect of this entire philosophy. It's one thing to understand this on an intellectual, philosophical level,
Yeah.
but how do we actually know what state we are in? The mind is notoriously deceptive. We can tell ourselves we are in a great, abundant state of consciousness while secretly harboring deep, paralyzing anxiety.
Oh, I've definitely done that. Fake it till you make it.
Exactly. But the material offers a brilliant workaround. It bypasses the mind entirely and moves right into the physical body.
This is where it gets really actionable. The text directs us to use our physical body as a literal barometer for our state of consciousness.
It's so practical.
Let's actually do this right now. If you're listening to this, whether you're commuting, walking the dog, or doing dishes, bring your attention inward for a moment. Think about a recent situation that genuinely frustrated you.
Just hold it lightly in your mind.
A moment where you felt someone else was completely at fault, or an external event derailed your plans. Hold that external cause in your mind.
As you hold that memory, analyze the physical sensations occurring in your body. When we externalize cause,
Meaning when we blame the outside world.
right, when we believe the outside world is doing something to us, the body almost always contracts. You might feel a subtle tightening in your jaw. Your shoulders might hike up towards your ears. Your breathing might become slightly shallower.
A physical bracing.
A reactive, rigid tone appears in the musculature. You assume a literal posture of defense.
I can feel it just thinking about trying to navigate through a crowded airport when I'm running late.
The ultimate stress test.
My shoulders immediately get tight. There's this tiny microscopic bracing for impact. It's a full body contraction. It reminds me of that universal human instinct to turn down the car radio when you're driving in a storm and looking for a specific address.
Yes. Why do we do that?
We physically tense up and try to control the sensory input of the external environment because we feel overwhelmed by it.
That tension is the physical manifestation of believing you're at the mercy of the outside world. When you believe an external event is the foundational cause of your reality, you are instinctively placed in a defensive crouch.
Because you're under attack.
You have to protect yourself from the world because the world is happening to you. You have to interpret what people mean. You have to defend your position. You have to fight back against the circumstances. That requires immense physical and energetic tension.
It's exhausting.
It is the biological cost of externalizing cause.
What I appreciate so much about this philosophy is how reassuring it is regarding this tension.
It's very gentle in that regard.
Usually in self-help or mindfulness spaces, if you feel tense, you feel like you've failed. You failed the Zen test. You aren't enlightened enough.
Right, more guilt.
But the material explicitly says this is not a mistake. It is a signal. It asks us not to judge the contraction. It's just a dashboard light turning on in your car.
That's a great way to look at it.
It simply shows that your consciousness has turned outward and is currently treating the external world as the primary source of reality.
It is a profound reframe. The tension isn't a moral failure. It's diagnostic information. It tells you exactly where your awareness is anchored in real time.
It's just data.
Exactly.
Yeah.
When you feel that tightness, that burning need to argue with reality or prove you are right, your body is loudly declaring, I have forgotten the inner cause. I am currently trying to fight the mirror.
So if that contraction is the somatic signal of outward focus, what is the signal of recognizing the inner cause? Because the text contrasts this beautifully. It says that when you start searching for the cause outside of yourself, a very subtle physical shift appears.
The author describes it as leaning back slightly within.
Leaning back.
It's a sensation of less struggle, less proving, and what is described as a quiet, wordless knowing appears, a feeling of it happens from here.
It happens from here.
Yeah.
When I try to visualize that shift, that leaning back, it feels exactly like dropping a rope in the middle of a brutal tug of war.
Yeah.
You just open your hands and let go. The other side falls over, the tension snaps, and the game is just over. There's less struggle because you aren't trying to wrestle the external world into submission anymore.
Exactly. Why does the struggle end? Because you realize the absolute futility of it. You are no longer fighting the reflection.
Because it's just a reflection.
When you recognize that the external event, the rude person, the missed flight, the bad meeting, is just a consequence, a revelation of a state you are occupying. Who is there to fight?
Nobody.
What is there to defend against? The desperate need to prove yourself to an external reality dissolves because you realize a reality is just echoing your own internal tone.
And the body feels that.
The body responds to this realization with profound relief. The tension dissipates. The defensive posture drops. You physically and energetically lean back into your own center of gravity.
That feeling of dropping the rope is huge.
Yeah.
But I need to stop right here.
Okay.
Because I know what you're thinking if you're listening to this. And it is the massive elephant in the room whenever concepts like this are discussed.
I know exactly where you're going with this.
Let me push back on this entirely. If someone rear-ends my car at a stoplight or someone steals my wallet, the text is saying I shouldn't treat them as the cause of my distress.
Right.
That borders dangerously on victim blaming, doesn't it? If I accept this inner cause, doesn't that just mean everything bad that happens is my fault? Does it mean I ruined this?
The trap of self-blame.
Because frankly, I don't want to carry the burden of being responsible for every awful driver or rude person on the planet.
That is the absolute most critical hurdle to cross when encountering this philosophy. It is where so many people misinterpret these ideas and fall into what we might call New Age guilt.
Yes, or toxic manifestation anxiety.
Exactly. This terrifying idea that every stray negative thought is going to spawn a disaster, so you constantly police your own mind.
Which just causes more tension.
The source material anticipates this exact fear and addresses it head-on. It vehemently clarifies that recognizing the inner cause is absolutely, unequivocally, not self-blame. It explicitly states recognizing the inner cause is not self-blame. It does not mean I ruined this.
Thank goodness, because that's where I usually tap out on these concepts. It's exhausting enough to deal with the stolen wallet without also having to beat myself up for supposedly manifesting the thief.
All right.
But how does the text navigate that? If I am the cause, but I'm not to blame, what's the difference?
There is a massive qualitative difference in the energy of those two positions.
Yeah.
This is a statement of finality. It looks backward. It is anchored in guilt and shame.
And guilt is a terrible state to be in.
And ironically, if you recall our discussion on the field of selection, guilt is a state of consciousness that will simply act as a magnet to select more experiences for you to feel guilty about.
Oh, wow. It's a self-perpetuating trap.
Exactly. The material defines the inner cause not as a burden to the past, but as a creative position for the future.
A creative position.
Yes. Recognizing the inner cause simply means acknowledging I am the state of consciousness from which a new reality can emerge.
From which a new reality can emerge.
It is a shift from being a passive victim of your own history to being the active architect of your next moment. It's not about agonizing over how your past state created a car accident. It's about recognizing that right now, in this moment, you have the agency to select the state from which you will respond to the accident.
I am the state of consciousness from which a new reality can emerge. That feels incredibly empowering rather than heavy. It neutralizes the past.
It completely drops the baggage.
And the author provides these wonderfully evocative descriptors for what the inner cause actually feels like. It calls it a quality of consciousness, a fundamental tone, a felt sense of being, and my personal favorite, an inner climate.
Inner climate is perhaps the most accessible metaphor in the entire text.
I love it because my baseline inner climate is often a mildly panicked overcast.
I think a lot of people relate to that.
And if your inner climate is a hurricane of anxiety, you can't genuinely expect the external world to present you with a sunny day at the beach.
No, you can't.
And the text points out a hard, unbreakable rule about this. From this state of consciousness, certain experiences become natural, while others do not. You literally cannot force a positive external outcome from a contracted, defensive inner climate. The physics of it just don't work.
If we connect this inner climate concept to the broader patterns of human behavior, It perfectly explains why so many of our desperate efforts to change our lives inevitably fall flat.
Because we focus on the outside.
We almost always try to change the outside world first. We change jobs because our boss is toxic. We end relationships because our partner is difficult. We move to a new city because we feel stuck.
The geographic cure.
Right. We try to force a different outcome through sheer exhausting willpower. But if the inner climate, the fundamental tone of our consciousness remains exactly the same, what happens?
The new job eventually produces the exact same stress and toxic dynamics as the old job. The new city feels just as lonely and isolating as the old city. The new relationship falls into the exact same destructive arguments as the previous one. You're just taking your internal weather system with you to a new zip code.
Exactly.
You're trying to change the weather by standing in your backyard and yelling at the rain clouds, rather than shifting the internal climate that is producing the storm in the first place.
That is a flawless analogy. Yelling at the rain is the ultimate externalization of cause. The material makes this foundational truth incredibly clear. This is why the world is not the first thing that must change.
It's the last thing.
What must first be recognized is the state of consciousness. Change does not begin outside. Change begins when consciousness recognizes itself as the cause.
Okay, so theoretically, this all makes sense. We understand the ontology, the mirror, the RAS, the physical sensation of dropping the rope, and the difference between creative position and self-blame.
We've covered a lot of ground.
The golden question now is, how do we actually do this? If I'm fuming in my car right now because I'm stuck in gridlock traffic, how do I actually stop and shift this inner climate without just suppressing my anger or slapping a fake smile on my face?
The practical application.
Because I know myself, and I can easily turn checking my inner climate into just another exhausting, hyper-analytical task on my daily to-do list.
And that hyper-analysis is exactly the trap the author wants you to avoid. It doesn't want this to become another rigorous mental gymnastics routine.
Good.
The material provides a very specific, almost deceptively simple exercise to shift your state without getting tangled in the endless loop of the analytical mind.
Yes, let's look at the exercise directly. I want you to actually do this with us right now. Think of a current situation in your life that is challenging, confusing, or frustrating. Bring it clearly to mind.
Got it.
Now, here is the crucial, absolute rule for this exercise from the text. Do not analyze it. Do not interpret it.
That is by far the hardest part for the human brain.
It really is.
We are meaning-making machines. The moment we think of a problem, we want to dive headfirst into the story.
We want to know why.
We want to figure out who is right, who is wrong, what they meant by that email, what steps we need to take to defend ourselves. We want to litigate the past. But the exercise asks you to halt that machinery entirely. Stop the interpretation. Freeze the story.
Instead of analyzing the details of the drama, the material tells you to simply step back and ask quietly, from which state of consciousness does this situation become experienceable for me?
From which state of consciousness does this situation become experienceable for me? Let's examine the underlying mechanics of why that specific question is so remarkably powerful.
Okay.
In psychology, we would call this a pattern interrupt. It completely bypasses the narrative of the event and goes straight to the ontological root. It forces your awareness to pull back from the drama playing on the movie screen and look directly at the projector.
And what's truly magical about this, according to the philosophy, is that you do not need an immediate answer.
You don't.
You don't have to suddenly categorize your state of mind or label it state 4B, mild annoyance. It states, the question itself begins to shift the state of consciousness. Just the act of asking the question is the action.
Yes. Why does the question itself catalyze the shift?
Yeah.
Because by the very act of asking it, you are stepping out of the state of being a passive victim of circumstance, and you are actively stepping into the creative position.
You're taking the power back.
The moment you ask, from what state am I experiencing this, you are implicitly acknowledging the core truth, that you are the consciousness generating the experience. You are reclaiming the inner cause.
And the body feels that.
That very recognition is what causes the body to lean back, the physical contraction to ease, and the internal climate to shift.
It's so liberating. You don't have to fix the problem. You just have to locate the state that perceives it as a problem. And this leads to what I think is the most massive, paradigm-shattering revelation in this entire text. It says, manifestation does not become free when you know many methods. The method is a consequence. The state of consciousness is the cause.
This point cannot be overstated, especially in today's culture.
Oh, man.
We live in an era that is absolutely obsessed with methods. We are drowning in life hacks, 5 a.m. morning routines, 10-step manifestation journals, productivity apps, and communication frameworks.
It never ends.
We are constantly hunting for the perfect method to fix our messy lives.
Oh, I am totally 100% guilty of this. If something goes wrong in my life, my immediate instinct is to look for a new method to fix it. If I'm stressed, I don't look at my state. I decide I need a new meditation app.
Right.
If my work is lagging, I don't look at my state. I buy a new complex planner system. We use methods as a way to avoid looking at our inner climate.
Exactly. We use the method as a shield. But the material is giving us a stark warning. If the state of consciousness doesn't change, the method is utterly functionally useless. You are just applying a shiny new organizational method from a state of profound internal chaos. And because the state is the true ontological cause, the method will inevitably fail to produce the desired peace or productivity.
But if you flip it,
However, if you shift the state of consciousness first, if you change the inner climate to one of peace or clarity, the author argues that the right method will flow naturally as a consequence.
the method becomes a consequence. That changes everything. It means you don't have to aggressively hunt for the solution to your problem.
You stop forcing it.
If you establish the inner climate of peace or success or clarity, the specific actions, the brilliant ideas, the methods needed to express that state will naturally occur to you. You won't have to force them. They will simply be the logical, effortless next steps born from that specific state.
It relieves an immense, crushing amount of pressure. It returns us to what the text calls a quiet responsibility.
Quiet responsibility.
Your only true responsibility in this life is to recognize and tend to the inner cause, your state of consciousness. Everything else, the external events, the methods, the solutions, the people, will reorganize themselves around that new center of gravity.
Reorganize themselves.
As the material beautifully summarizes, in the world of external causes, you are always reacting. In the state of inner cause, you are present. And from that presence, experience reorganizes itself.
Experience reorganizes itself. What an incredible promise.
It is.
So let's take a breath and recap this incredibly deep dive. What we've learned from this amazing source material is that external reality doesn't cause your life. It reveals your inner state.
The mirror.
When you feel your body tense up and contract in the face of a challenge, it's not a moral failure, it's a somatic signal that you've turned your focus outward, mistaking the mirror for the projector.
You're grabbing the rope.
Exactly. By simply asking, from what state of consciousness is this experienceable, without trying to analyze the answer, you drop the rope. You shift into a creative position. You establish an inner climate of quiet responsibility, which is the absolute ontological root of all change.
And honestly, we've really only just scratched the surface of the mechanics described in this philosophy today.
We really have. In fact, the source material leaves us with a fascinating tease for the future. It mentions that there is a follow-up, an exploration that refines this entire process even further.
Oh, there is so much more.
It promises to dive into the exact difference between a passing thought, a fleeting feeling, and a true anchored state of consciousness in the process of creation. And even more exciting, it promises to teach how to recognize the exact, precise point where the inner shift truly occurs. I cannot wait to dig into that material next.
It's going to be vital. Because distinguishing between just having a positive thought and actually occupying a new state is where the real mastery of this concept lies.
Absolutely.
But before we conclude today's exploration, I want to leave you with a final thought to mull over as you go about the rest of your day. If we connect everything we've discussed back to that brilliant, biologically backed concept of the field of selection.
The RAS.
Yes, the idea that your current state acts as a filter that determines what you can and cannot even perceive in your reality, this raises an incredibly profound question for your own life.
Let's hear it.
If your current state of consciousness acts as a field of selection that determines what you can and cannot experience, what incredible life-changing opportunities are standing right in front of you at this exact second, completely invisible to you, simply because your current inner climate doesn't have the capacity to select them.
Oh, wow.
And what happens to your life the moment you finally lean back, drop the struggle, and change the weather?
Wow. That is definitely the question to carry with you today. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. We'll see you next time.
Thank you for listening to this episode. If you enjoyed the conversation, please consider subscribing to the channel. For more in-depth and advanced content, you're welcome to join us on Patreon. We'll be back next week with the continuation of this topic.